The Iraqi currency market ended Saturday's trading session, with the US dollar recording a slight decline against the Iraqi dinar, reflecting another day of cautious movement in Iraq's parallel market. According to the latest market survey, the US dollar closed at approximately 152,950 Iraqi dinars per 100 US dollars in Baghdad's Al Khaifa and Al Harithia central exchanges. Earlier in the day, the exchange rate had been hovering around 153,000 dinars per 100 US dollars, meaning the market experienced a modest decrease before trading concluded. Although this change may appear small, even minor fluctuations are closely watched by traders, businesses, importers, and Iraqi citizens because they provide valuable insight into the direction of the foreign exchange market. Throughout the trading day, market participants monitored exchange activity carefully as prices moved within a relatively narrow range. The difference between the morning and closing session amounted to only about 50 dinars per 100 US dollars, suggesting that the market remained generally stable despite normal buying and selling activity. Such limited movements often indicate that there were no major economic shocks or unexpected developments influencing foreign currency demand during the day. Instead, the market appeared to respond naturally to regular commercial transactions and investor sentiment. According to reports from Baghdad's exchange markets, the dollar settled at 152,950 dinars per 100 US dollars by the close of trading. This represented a slight improvement in the value of the Iraqi dinar compared to the morning session when the dollar was trading at approximately 153,000 dinars. While the numerical difference is relatively small, experienced currency traders recognize that these gradual adjustments can sometimes signal changing supply and demand conditions within the market. However, one trading session alone is not sufficient to establish a long-term trend, and future market performance will depend on several economic and financial factors. In Baghdad's local exchange shops, selling prices were reported at 153,500 dinars per 100 US dollars, while buying prices stood at 152,500 dinars. This spread between buying and selling rates represents the normal operating margin maintained by exchange businesses. Currency dealers adjust these margins according to market liquidity, customer demand, operating costs, and competitive conditions. A difference of around 1,000 dinars per $100 between buying and selling rates remains common in Iraq's parallel currency market and reflects ordinary market operations rather than unusual volatility. Meanwhile, the Kurdistan region also experienced relatively stable exchange activity. In Erbil, exchange shops sold the US dollar at approximately 153,050 dinars per 100 US dollars, while buying prices were reported at 152,950 dinars. The difference between Baghdad and Erbil remained relatively limited, showing that currency markets across different regions of Iraq continued to move in close alignment. Although small regional variations are common due to local demand and liquidity conditions, today's figures indicate that both major markets maintained similar pricing throughout the day. The slight decline in the dollar's value during Saturday's trading may appear insignificant on the surface, but every movement is carefully analyzed by businesses involved in imports, wholesalers purchasing international goods, investors managing foreign currency exposure, and households monitoring purchasing power. Since Iraq relies heavily on imported products ranging from food and medicine to electronics and industrial equipment, exchange rate movements directly influence import costs. Even modest improvements in the dinar's value can slightly reduce import expenses if sustained over time. Importers generally prefer periods of exchange rate stability because predictable currency prices allow them to estimate costs more accurately when negotiating international contracts. When the market experiences only small fluctuations, businesses can plan inventory purchases with greater confidence. Saturday's relatively calm trading session, therefore, provided some reassurance to commercial participants that no sudden disruptions were affecting currency availability. Foreign exchange dealers also observed that overall trading volumes appeared balanced throughout the session. There was no indication of unusually heavy demand for US dollars, nor evidence of significant selling pressure. Instead, buyers and sellers continued conducting transactions within expected market conditions. Such balanced activity often contributes to stable pricing because neither side of the market exerts overwhelming influence on exchange rates. Several factors continuously shape Iraq's parallel currency market. Daily fluctuations may result from importer demand for foreign currency, government financial operations, public confidence, seasonal commercial activity, banking liquidity, international oil revenues, and regional economic developments. Because these influences interact simultaneously, small day-to-day movements should be interpreted cautiously rather than viewed as indicators of major economic changes. Oil revenues remain one of the most important long-term influences on Iraq's economy and foreign currency position. Since Iraq earns the majority of its government revenue through crude oil exports, international energy prices indirectly affect overall financial conditions. Higher oil income generally strengthens government finances and supports foreign exchange reserves, while weaker oil markets can create additional fiscal pressure. However, daily movements in the parallel exchange market are not determined solely by oil prices. Instead, they reflect immediate trading activity, combined with broader expectations. Regarding liquidity and economic policy, the Central Bank of Iraq continues to play the primary role in maintaining monetary stability through its official exchange rate framework and foreign currency management policies. The central bank supplies foreign currency to the banking sector through authorized mechanisms intended to support legitimate commercial transactions, while promoting stability within Iraq's financial system. At the same time, the parallel market responds independently to actual supply and demand among exchange companies and customers. It is important for viewers to understand the distinction between Iraq's official exchange rate and the parallel market rate discussed in today's trading report. The figures reported from Baghdad and Erbil represent transactions taking place within the parallel market, rather than changes announced by monetary authorities. The official exchange rate established by the Central Bank of Iraq remains separate from these market quotations. Daily fluctuations in exchange shops do not automatically indicate changes in official monetary policy. Throughout recent months, Iraq's currency market has generally experienced periods of relative stability, punctuated by occasional fluctuations driven by commercial demand and market sentiment. Traders have become accustomed to monitoring even relatively minor changes, because they may provide clues regarding future market direction. Nevertheless, today's decline of approximately 50 dinars per $100 remains well within the range of normal daily movement observed in Iraq's currency market. Consumers also pay close attention to exchange rates because imported goods account for a significant portion of products available in Iraqi markets. Exchange rate stability helps businesses maintain more predictable retail prices, although any effect on consumers typically develops gradually rather than immediately. Since retailers often purchase inventory over extended periods, temporary daily currency changes usually do not produce instant adjustments in store prices. Financial analysts often emphasize that sustainable exchange rate improvements depend on broader economic fundamentals rather than isolated daily movements. Factors including increased domestic production, stronger banking efficiency, improved investment confidence, continued foreign reserve strength, and responsible fiscal management all contribute to long-term currency stability. While today's modest strengthening of the dinar may be viewed positively, analysts generally prefer to observe consistent trends across multiple trading sessions before drawing broader conclusions. Exchange companies throughout Iraq continued serving customers under normal operating conditions during Saturday's trading. Transactions involving personal remittances, commercial payments, travel expenses, educational transfers, and business settlements proceeded without reports of major disruption. Routine market functioning remains an important indicator of confidence within Iraq's financial system, particularly during periods of stable exchange rate activity. Many investors also monitor differences between official banking channels and the parallel market when evaluating overall financial conditions. Narrower gaps between official and market rates are often viewed as signs of improving market efficiency, while wider differences may encourage closer examination of underlying supply and demand conditions. Today's trading remained consistent with recent market behavior, showing only limited variation between different exchange locations. International economic developments continue influencing expectations among currency traders worldwide. Changes in global interest rates, international financial conditions, regional political developments, commodity prices, and worldwide investor sentiment all contribute indirectly to currency markets, including Iraq's. Although Saturday's trading reflected mainly domestic market activity, participants remain aware that global developments can eventually influence local exchange behavior through multiple economic channels. Business owners involved in international trade frequently monitor both Baghdad and Erbil market prices when planning transactions. Because regional differences remained relatively modest today, companies operating across Iraq encountered generally consistent pricing regardless of location. This degree of uniformity contributes to smoother commercial operations by reducing uncertainty associated with regional exchange rate disparities. The relatively narrow movement observed between the morning session and the market close also suggests that speculative activity remained limited during today's trading. Significant speculative buying or selling often produces larger intraday price swings. Instead, today's gradual adjustment points toward a market driven primarily by ordinary commercial transactions rather than aggressive speculation. Households receiving remittances from relatives abroad may also follow daily exchange rates closely because even small differences influence the local currency value of incoming transfers. Although today's movement was relatively modest, families exchanging foreign currency naturally benefit whenever the dinar strengthens slightly against the dollar. Likewise, individuals purchasing dollars for travel or educational expenses often monitor daily fluctuations in hopes of securing more favorable exchange rates. Looking ahead, market participants will continue watching whether the dollar remains near current levels or experiences additional movement during upcoming trading sessions. Future performance will depend on domestic liquidity conditions, importer demand, commercial activity, banking operations, and broader economic developments. Because Iraq's foreign exchange market responds continuously to changing conditions, daily monitoring remains essential for businesses and investors alike. Economic stability remains one of Iraq's long-term priorities as policymakers continue implementing financial reforms designed to strengthen the banking sector, improve electronic payment systems, increase transparency, and support sustainable economic growth. While these reforms may gradually influence overall financial conditions, their effects typically emerge over extended periods rather than through immediate daily changes in exchange shop pricing. For today's session, the key takeaway is that Iraq's parallel currency market remained relatively calm. Despite recording a slight decline in the value of the US dollar, Baghdad's central exchanges closed at approximately 152,950 dinars per 100 US dollars, marginally lower than the morning level of 153,000 dinars. Exchange shops in Baghdad reported selling prices of 153,500 dinars and buying prices of 152,500 dinars, while Erbil recorded selling prices of 153,050 dinars and buying prices of 152,950 dinars. These figures indicate continued market stability, with only limited day-to-day variation. It is also important to emphasize that today's market update concerns only the parallel market exchange rates observed in Baghdad and Erbil. There has been no official Iraqi Dinar revaluation RV, no official change to the Central Bank of Iraq's exchange rate, and no announcement from the Iraqi government or the Central Bank of Iraq regarding any official adjustment to the value of the Iraqi dinar. Any claim suggesting that today's parallel market movement represents an official revaluation would be inaccurate. The official exchange rate policy remains determined solely by the Central Bank of Iraq, and any future changes would require formal public announcements through official government and central bank channels. As always, investors, businesses, and viewers should distinguish between routine fluctuations in the parallel market and official monetary policy decisions. Daily movements like those recorded today are a normal feature of currency trading and should not be interpreted as evidence of an official currency reform or revaluation. Monitoring reliable market data and official announcements remains the best approach for understanding developments in Iraq's foreign exchange market. Saturday's trading ultimately reflected a stable and orderly market with only a modest strengthening of the Iraqi dinar against the US dollar, providing another example of the gradual day-to-day adjustments that characterize Iraq's parallel currency market.